Hi, everybody. I want to introduce you to Lucy Flores. She's running in Nevada's 4th District. Lucy has a very interesting background. She's one of 13 children. She dropped out of high school, ended up going back for her GED, ended up after a very varied educational background. She ended up in the Nevada State Assembly from 2010 to 2014, where she became the vice chair of the Nevada Hispanic Legislative Caucus in 2012. Lucy Flores, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
You know, Tara Margolin and I saw you on television, and you were asked an interesting question, which I'm sure you ask quite often. And that is, you are a woman, obviously, running for the House, and yet you have endorsed Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, and your response was very articulate, and I that was when I noticed you went, wow, we need her. And what was clear to me listening to you was that you are very clear on the difference between a real progressive Democrat and a corporate Democrat. Right. So I would like to hear your thoughts about this and why you think that recognition of that difference is so important for those serving in Congress.
Absolutely. Well, look, I, as a former member of the Nevada legislature and running for Congress myself now, I talk with people every single day. I recognize the challenges that people are experiencing every single day. And ultimately, when it was time for me to make a decision about who I wanted to support for president, those issues that affect people and myself every single day are the exact same issues that Bernie Sanders was making central to his platform. This idea that in today's economy, that the top 1% are reaping almost the entire benefits of our improved economy, where people are continuing to struggle, where we look at our political system and people have less faith every single day that politicians can actually do anything for them. I mean, these are the things that Bernie Sanders is focusing on, that he has made central to his platform, and that frankly really resonated with me in terms of the challenges that I saw people experiencing every single day, and also the challenges that I experienced growing up in Northeast Las Vegas, and frankly the fact that I felt like things are not getting better for many people. Actually, it's getting worse for a lot of people. And so those things really spoke to me, they spoke to my heart, and I think that they really speak to everyday people, which is why Bernie's momentum and his energy that he's been able to build up with people across this country has been so incredible to watch.
I feel like a corporate establishment within the Democratic Party has kind of sucked the soul out of the party. And I think this is a real crisis for progressives, because we have at various times thought that there was a channel for real progressive enthusiasm within the Democratic Party. One of the reasons we're doing this summit is because there are so many people, such as yourself, standing for real progressive policies who do have corporate-backed, establishment-backed opponents in your primaries. And that's so important, because if the establishment is able to just cut progressivism off on the level of the primary, then of course all we're going to get is the same old, same old. As you said, that same old is getting worse rather than better.
That's exactly right. And what's been really important for me to see with Bernie and frankly the issues that are being elevated, we've known for some time that progressive issues are the right issues, that people, no matter what your partisan affiliation, believe in these issues. Because when we've seen them presented at the ballot level, they have won in deep red states. We've seen deep red states increase the minimum wage. We've seen them vote for access to the ballot box. We've seen them do all kinds of incredible progressive things in their states, even though they're considered red states. And so what I think has been really critical about what Bernie's also doing is he's connected those dots. He said, these issues are winning issues, and Democrats also stand for these issues. So in terms of these primaries and making sure that we have people that are running on a progressive agenda, I think is not only critical, but is one of the really amazing things that Bernie's also accomplished with his presidential campaign.
Well,
and that's definitely where I'm at in terms of saying, I have been endorsed now by the three major, most prominent progressive organizations in the country: MoveOn.org, the Progressive Campaign Change Committee, and Democracy for America. And so being able now to elevate those issues and connect those dots to candidates, saying also running on that same agenda, I think is really demonstrating the strength of those issues for people.
Those issues are not just winning, they are mainstream.
That's
this
right.
is where people really need to feel. And I think for a long time, the Democrats have been saying that they didn't understand when they lost elections because they knew that they had people on the issues. But people, who people vote for comes from a different part of the brain.
That's right.
Than the intellectual analysis or even political or self-interested analysis of an issue. And I think that this sort of corporate talk, yada, 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 comes across as very cold to people.
That's
and
exactly
disingenuous
right.
and for good reason. Now, when you are a U.S. Congresswoman, if you are a U.S. Congresswoman, what will be the issues that you feel that you can or that you wish to make the most kind of difference around? Is it criminal justice? Is it climate change? Is it getting money out of politics? Where does your heart, what keeps you up at night saying, when I'm there, I'm going to blank, blank, blank?
Well, it's all of the above, but really it's about being able to truly climb the social and economic ladder in this country. I think poverty is a massive, not only issue, but a critical turning point for this country. When you have such accumulation of wealth in so few hands, you now are cutting off opportunity for families, for young people to be able to educate themselves, to be able to climb that social ladder. We are now at a time where we have a generation of people who quite possibly could be doing worse than the generation before them. And it's because we have not invested properly in our schools. It's because the cost of education is so astronomical. It's because we have so many young people now who are graduating with an enormous amount of debt. Instead of buying their first house or instead of investing in their retirement, etc., they're spending almost all of their free cash on their student loan payments. I mean, we've just gotten into a situation, and that's not even talking about the very real criminal justice system issues that we have, the social inequalities that exist. And all of these things are interconnected, climate change and the disproportionate impact that climate change has on low-income communities. I mean, there's just so many issues out there that overlap, and so we can't look at these issues in silos. We can't say that, that you're going to work on climate change, but that's not at all related to poverty, or it's not at all related to
these are not
economic injustice, right? So I'm passionate about all of those things, and I think that we really just have to have a more elevated, progressive agenda in general, and that's going to allow us to focus on all of these issues in very real, substantive ways, and also change the public narrative around it, change the public dialogue. The fact that we're even now talking about these issues, that, as you said, they are mainstream, is I think just an enormous change, even from 2014, when you had candidates, frankly, who were running away from democratic ideals, Democratic candidates who were running away from democratic ideals, Democratic candidates who wouldn't even admit that they had voted for Barack Obama, for goodness sakes. And so I think you've just seen such a huge 180 between the politics of 2014 and the politics of now.
People are beginning to understand that this is it's not even an indirect attack. It amounts to a direct attack on democracy itself. You can't
Absolutely.
be a democracy and an oligarchy at the same time. You can't be a democracy and a plutocracy at the same time.
Absolutely.
I think clearly we need federal funding of public funding of all federal elections. Would you agree with that? And you're going to do everything possible to override Citizens United then, correct?
Absolutely.
Constitutional amendment?
Absolutely. Whether it's a constitutional amendment or hopefully getting a Supreme Court that can overturn that, because this is, look, Supreme Court, they have overturned a number of
Plessy versus Ferguson and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not like it hasn't been done before. So either getting a Supreme Court that actually sees the impact that this is having on our democracy, or going through a constitutional amendment process, it really is one of those two. Those are the only options that we have, and I think that we have to do whatever we possibly can to keep trumpeting that horn, because I couldn't agree more. Citizens United, frankly, has been one of the biggest threats to our democracy in a very long time. Ever.
Well, it's time for the people to speak, and you certainly are one of the people who are speaking, and you are one of the women who are speaking, which represents a force and a power and a passion that we need to see more of. So I'm impressed by your campaign. I'm impressed by you. I'm impressed by the things you stand for. And I look forward to the work you're going to do, no matter where you are, U.S. House of Representatives and or anywhere else, because as I say, you got it going on.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Hi, I'm very excited to introduce you to this next gentleman. His name is Tom Guild, and he is running for Oklahoma's 5th District. And I want you to know that he is one of the first candidates to publicly endorse Bernie Sanders for president. Tom Guild is running in a tough primary, and his primary again is against a gentleman who is very much a corporate Democrat. He already serves in the State House in Oklahoma. He has, voted in just the ways that Oklahoma Oil and Gas would want him to. He has refused to support the raising of the minimum wage. And this is what's happening, as we talk about all the time. There's a two-ring circus going on here. One has to do with this political revolution around the country, and one has to do with the political revolution inside the Democratic Party. Now, that same kind of revolution is happening inside the Republican Party as well. It has to do with an overthrow of this kind of stultified, very much corrupted status quo in both parties. So Tom Guild is somebody to watch, and someone very much for those of us with progressive politics to support. We'll be letting you know throughout this interview that you can help him, support him, and learn more about him at Guild, G-U-I-L-D, guildforcongress.com. Hi, Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, Tom, you have been for decades, 30 years or so, a professor. You are now Professor Emeritus of Legal Studies, Oklahoma Central University. What makes you want to run? I heard a very poignant story about your own childhood, how you grew up, obviously in a way where you and your own family were at the effect of some of the economic inequality in our country and some of the just basic injustice and unfairness. What happened inside you that took you from a child at the effect of some pretty difficult circumstances to not only a professional successful educator to someone who actually is running for Congress and intends to win? What was that trajectory inside yourself?
My early childhood, we lived in severe poverty in Wichita, Kansas. And my parents worked whenever they could or would, but it wasn't enough to really sustain our family. So my brother Robert and I, for many years, or in our early childhood, lived on government commodities. And if it hadn't been for that, we probably would have starved to death. We also had to depend on the kindness of strangers, like the personnel at my elementary school that bought me clothing and shoes and other things and bought my meals at school so that I wouldn't be embarrassed and so that I could kind of be part of the group.
What are the changes in government that you want to see today and that we should trust that you would take a stand for and work hard for in order to provide more Americans with a real shot at this American dream, a real shot at life, liberty, and a reasonable pursuit of happiness? What are the issues, the values that you want to stand for in Congress that you think could make a difference?
As a college professor emeritus, I know firsthand the struggles that college students go through and how that some of them are taking a full-time load, have a full-time family responsibility, and some are even working full-time jobs on top of that. And indeed, a lot of people are being buried in a mountain of student debt. And so when they get out of school, the average student is about $30,000 in debt. And we need to do something about that. Elizabeth Warren and others have come up with some really common sense things we can do, letting college students who have student loan debt renegotiate the terms of their loan to get a lower interest rate, and also letting college students borrow money at the same rate that the Fed loans money to the big banks, and that would be very low. So just doing those two practical things would make the mountain a lot smaller and make life a lot more bearable for people once they get through college.
And I think allowing an easier access to college is really the primary stimulant to the U.S. economy, because it gives more people the opportunity for access in terms of the skills that they develop, the education that they have, which enables them to do great things and creative things within the free market. Talk to me about the difference, if you feel comfortable doing so. I know that you've endorsed Bernie. How do you see the plan to deal with college debt crisis of Hillary's versus Bernie's, and why you support Bernie on this issue as well as others?
Well, free college tuition is a great aspiration. And even if we can't do it for all 4 years, doing it for 2 years of community college is a great goal. Because even if people can get that first 2-year degree and get their foot in the door, they can go out and make a lot more money and provide for themselves and their families. And if they get 2 years under their belts, then there's a good chance they could go on and get a full bachelor's degree if that's their desire. And I know that in my own life, growing up poor and being lucky and being adopted at the age of 8.5, that finishing high school, which I was bored and wanted to drop out but didn't, and finishing college even though I had senioritis, but finishing law school even though, golly, gee whiz, the last year I wanted to tear my hair out at times, I was so bored. But that has been the best thing I've ever done, and to make that accessible to any students who are interested in that path, we need to do that, because as you said, it grows the economy and makes our country stronger.
Talk to me about what you think is going on in this country. You know, I tell you, I come from Texas. I was born and raised in Houston. My mother was born and raised in Houston. So I come from an era in which there was a strong progressive tradition in Texas, a strong progressive tradition in Oklahoma, a strong progressive tradition in states like Arkansas. So it's very important for progressives not to write off in their thinking the progressive sentiment in states like Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and so forth. Do we have a chance? What do you think is going on in this country, and what do you think is going on in states like Oklahoma that make your candidacy and your successful candidacy possible?
Well, when I taught legal issues in the workplace at the University of Central Oklahoma, I always used, when we talked about white-collar crime, I used a book, and this was for decades, The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. And that's kind of an overstatement. That's kind of where we are. The minimum wage, even in Oklahoma, which has a relatively inexpensive cost of living, someone working full-time would need to make almost $10 an hour to exist in Oklahoma. And so we need to raise that minimum wage up to a living wage so that not only people that are working full-time and hard in Oklahoma, but people in every state, in every corner of the country, can have pride in the fact that I worked hard, I got my paycheck, I paid my fair share, and by golly, I can at least support myself and my family now.
So this is the question. The question is about Oklahoma and also about the country. It seems like so many of the people that have been at the effect of the situation that you just described have actually voted for the people who make sure that the situation stays the way it is. Is that about to change in America? Can that change? Do you feel more and more people in Oklahoma who might not have thought years ago that they would vote for someone like yourself are coming to recognize that you are the candidate, and candidates like you who speak to the righting of the wrongs within our economic system that will enable them more of a chance at life?
Well, you remember the old movie Network, I'm Mad as Hell and I'm not going to take it any longer? Right. Well, there's almost $1 billion deficit in the Oklahoma State budget because of the cutting the severance tax for the oil and gas industry from 7% to 2%, because of cutting the state income tax for the very wealthy. And we don't have enough money for schools or roads or mental health or any of the essential services. And it's very, very, very red, very Republican. And by a comfortable margin, a coach and teacher ran as the Democrat and got more than 56% of the vote.
Oh, yeah.
So if Bob Dylan said
The times they are a change.
Change is coming. All the more reason to vote for guildforcongress.com, to vote for Tom Guild. I wish you the very best, Tom. Thank you very much for being here on our Progressive Summit. I hope that this interview has given you some exposure to a broader progressive audience that will see the absolute significance and importance of supporting you in every way possible. God bless you, sir. Thank you so much.
God bless you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, you know, a large part of why we're here is to take a stand not just for progressives who are running for Congress, but specifically related to the fact that in these primaries, you have these establishment-backed, corporate-backed candidates. Yes, they're Democrats, but they represent a Democratic establishment and a Democratic leadership that seems to not want what many of us think of as the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party anywhere around. That's why we're doing this summit. So you know who the progressives are and know that you can't wait for the general election to know that you'll have a chance to vote for them. We need a new face of Congress, and that effort has to begin with these primaries. So I'm happy to introduce you to Eric Kingson. And Eric is running for New York District 24. The primary is on June 28th. Eric, hi, and welcome.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. I see that this is your first race. Public office, and you are a professor of social work at Syracuse University, and you've been doing that for 17 years.
That's correct.
But that's just the beginning of your significant resume. You are co-founder of a national group called Social Security Works. You are considered a national expert on Social Security. You started the Strengthen Social Security Coalition, a group working with more than 300 national and state organizations to strengthen and expand Social Security. And just to take it even further, a book that you wrote on the topic is a significant part of the platform that is now used by Senator Bernie Sanders, who you have endorsed for the presidency. Is all that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well, all of that is a reason why we want to really make sure you get into Congress. Not only Social Security expansion, having someone like yourself there who is an expert on the topic, Medicare for all, campaign finance reform, income inequality. You know, Eric, one of the reasons that you interest me is because it seems to me that so many conservative activists make a pretty natural transition from activist to candidate. And on the progressive side, there are a lot of people like yourself who do excellent work, but never make that step and say, damn, I'm going to run myself. What happened inside you that you said, enough, I'm running?
Okay, let me just start at the beginning. I cut my teeth in the civil rights movement, which was the core of what I did in the early 60s. And it's what drives me entirely through my career as an academic, as a person who's worked in communities. What we've done with Social Security Works, what drove me to this first and foremost is that our country is in a mess. Our democracy is at risk. The economics is unsustainable. It's undermining families. It's disrespectful. And so, like a lot of people, I'm tired. I don't want to watch that. I also felt it's important to step up as someone who has had a number of years of experience, kind of has a sense of who he is, and who wants to take his voice and amplify it, not only on Social Security, but on many issues concerning economic justice and democracy. So I never planned on running for Congress, but after working in Social Security Works, after helping to build this coalition I co-founded in the organization, and after seeing we move mountains, all of us working together, stopped cuts to everybody's Social Security and laid the foundation for shifting the argument so that now there's a discussion about expanding it. After being involved in that process, I decided, why not?
That's right. And I think the point is what you're saying, things can change. As a child of the 60s, and I am as well, we lived at a time where the same kind of revolutionary fervor was abroad in the land. And also, even though I think the assassinations obviously shut down the revolution, as it were, we did bring down a president and we did stop a war. Those things did occur. And of course, the birth of the civil rights movement. So I think that the fact that you have that visceral understanding that things can change, can be done, and all of the work that you've done with these national organizations means that you can take that kind of expertise into Congress.
Exactly. Also, as you're saying, talking about, I'm thinking about one of the phone calls I had. One of the things you have to do is you raise money.
Right.
You hope there are other ways to raise money, but you're on the phone. Called a woman who turned out to be 95 years old. And she gets on and she says, why? She says, so why are you calling, Professor? I said, well, I'm doing this. Well, what are you? Well, I'm calling because I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'd like to talk with you because I'm running for Congress. Why the hell do you want to do that? I'm 95 years old. I've been active politically my whole life. And this is the worst time I've ever seen anything. Why would you do it? And I hadn't really thought. And I said to her, I got my start in civil rights. And there's a song that always echoes in my mind, which is the ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking on a freedom land. That to me is the existential statement. I said to her, it's about an existential statement of you do it because yes, things are bad, but we have to keep doing it because that's how we bring about change.
I wish you the very, very best. I look forward. I know that a lot of people who are watching you now will be very enthusiastic about supporting your campaign. I hope that they'll tell everybody they know in New York District 24. I hope that you win your primary on June 28th and that we can have the opportunity to work with you more after that to get you to Congress in November.
I will look forward to being back after the 28th of June, and I really appreciate what you're doing too.
That's it for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed these interviews and that you will continue to be with us for this Progressive Online Summit, that you will continue to meet the candidates who can make the difference. We'll help them so they can help us. Thanks.